Welcome to the Engineers Hub podcast, where engineers come to connect, learn, grow, and get inspired. On every episode, we will be interviewing engineers, managers, technical experts, and industry leaders from various disciplines to share their stories and experience, uncover various engineering career paths, and inspire engineers to do more and be more. This is your host, Mamadou Jallo. Let's get started. Welcome to another edition of the Engineers Hub podcast. This is your host, Mamadou Jallo. I'm here with our guest today, Lawrence Dahunsi. I hope I'm not butchering your last name. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. No, you actually pronounce it very well, so that's good.
All right, that's great to hear. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us what you do. You are an engineer, but give us a little bit more. What's your title, where you work, and what got you into that field?
All right, so hey everyone. Like Mahmoud said, my name is Lawrence Dahunsi. I'm a mechanical engineer, but more specifically, I'm a test engineer. What that entails is, we take designs, concepts, and we run validation tests, and it's pretty much just making sure that whenever they actually go out into the field, they're going to have quality, reliability. You don't want to, have products going out and then hear one thing or the other happening. So we are kind of like the last. So I'm kind of the last line of defense against, whatever mishaps could come up. And what brought me into this was I've had lots of experiences in my past. So in my internships, I kind of had lots of design experience, and even in school, right? Like a lot of things we do in school is just like conceptual and design, and I wanted to actually get that hands-on experience. So that's why I was like, you know what? Let me actually see what test engineering is. So design is kind of like the beginning part, the concepts, all of that, but then test engineering is the latter part of things. So that's kind of why I'm here right now. So
Yeah, and you design something and you think, right, you want it to be made perfectly, but it's not always the case. What you want to be made and then what actually is made is not always the case. So that's why you need test
exactly.
engineers, for everything and all the things you see out there. So okay, what kind of products do you test?
So I work with Cummins, right? I'm a test engineer with Cummins, and Cummins is an engine manufacturer. So when you think about diesel engines, that's pretty much what Cummins does. So specifically, I work with testing the mid-range, so medium duty and heavy duty engines, and their components, their software. So when you think about engine, think about like fuel pump, think about your air handling system, all just big things that you jump into your car, you drive, but then
Right.
when you think about okay, what really makes this car move, then you're looking at your fuel, your air into it, your calibration, which is kind of the software that tells the engine what to do. So just testing the engine as a whole system, but then also focusing on these individual parts to know okay, what is happening, what is one part failing and how is it affecting the other part. Just kind of think about your car now. If something is wrong with one of the sensors that tells how much air is being pushed into the system, if something is wrong with that sensor, then that can end up affecting how much fuel is being used. You might notice that your car is burning more fuel, so that can actually be a sensor issue. So things like that can come up in this tiny issue can create a big impact on your car. And if you like this custom, this particular car brand, and then all of a sudden it's failing you, what's going to happen? You're going to want to consider a different brand, right? So it's kind of just being at that point where we kind of can see the engine as a system, but then you can actually see these individual parts to make sure that look, nothing can go wrong, nothing should go wrong. We catch every issues at every point in time. So
Wow, that's really awesome. So you actually know a lot about engines.
it's funny because when you start out in a role and you've not had that much experience, right? And I'm sure you're
Uh-huh.
very, familiar with this also. And a lot of engineers are familiar with this.
Hmm.
You start out in a role and then you're like, oh my God, I don't have a lot of experience in this. Like people working on planes or people working in, the electronics industry. So it's
Yeah.
similar with the engine industry, right? In Cummins, I started out and had very little knowledge, and
Hmm.
with time, my particular team was very good in that they trained us a lot.
Hmm.
We really learned a lot about okay, what happens with the engine, the different components involved. And
Hmm.
I won't say I'm an expert, but I would say definitely I'm at that point where I can talk to you about an engine comfortable and I can tell you,
That's good to know.
you know,
I'm just asking for
yeah.
selfish
Hmm.
reasons, in case my engine goes wrong. I'll just ring you up. Hey man, what's going on? Or is my mechanic being exaggerating? So I'm just asking for that
Yeah.
reason. But that's really awesome,
Hmm.
man. So did you actually was did you always wanted to work in cars when you went to mechanical engineering? And also, what even got you into getting into mechanical engineering in the first place? Did you always know coming out of high school that this is what you wanted to do?
So that's interesting, right? Because when I was graduating from high school, I knew
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be in engineering. I mean, I was good in maths. I kind of liked sciences,
Mm-hmm.
but then the funny thing is that I didn't want to go into something too physicsy, too into just physics,
Right.
and I also didn't want to go into something too chemistry because in high school those are like the main science courses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and graduating, I didn't know what to pick. It was between mechanical and electrical, but I felt like electrical was a lot of physics and I wanted a mixture. And I ended up picking mechanical
Mm-hmm.
for that. But then I realized that mechanical is also very physics related, but then in a different aspect. But that's kind of how I got into it. But then going through it, I realized that this is what I like because in mechanical you get to see the different aspects. I mean, ask me about at least the good amount of questions from electrical or chemical, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
able to answer it. So that's one thing that I knew. Okay, look, I'm going to stay in mechanical because I'm getting to see other sides of engineering altogether,
Yeah.
and I guess that's what really got me into mechanical.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I understand. I hear you. Because mechanical really gives you options because you
Mm-hmm.
could even work in electronics or electrics.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a mechanical engineer, just depending on your concentration and your interest.
Mm-hmm.
Working in cars, vehicles, airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you can do. Civil construction. Like there are a lot of things you can do. So I can definitely see that. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. But did you know you wanted to work with engines, cars, or was it kind
Oh
of
yeah.
just like a, mixture of chance and interest?
Yeah, so I would say it was a mixture, right? Because my first ever internship was with a oil and gas company,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really in design. My second internship or co-op was with a car industry, and that was the Honda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually enjoyed it, but then, like I said, I wanted something more hands-on. So and if you notice, a lot of mechanical engineering, I guess, majors end up going into the automotive industry.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I always thought, I would go into that industry, but I didn't think it would be like engines particularly. I was always thinking, oh, maybe Honda or Toyota or something. That's what I always thought I would end up with. But that's one of the nice things that you realize, especially when you're graduating, is there's this whole world of different careers and industries that you can go into.
Yeah.
And for me, just like you said, right, it was a mixture of interest and chance
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted something that had to do with moving parts,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you're gonna find in automotive. So
Right.
when Cummins, came to Cummins and give it a shot, they gave me a shot, and I was like, I enjoy this, right? I enjoy working in this industry. I enjoy making an impact in everyday vehicles that we see. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay. I don't want to get you into trouble, but what's the coolest car engine you worked on? Are you able to tell, or you're not supposed to?
Um, I can't I can't
I'm
say.
trying to get in trouble.
All I'll say is that Cummins is a leader in power in diesel engines,
Uh-huh.
and it's we go for performance,
Uh-huh.
and we go for a lot of things, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's why you can have an engine company that is a leader, right? I mean,
Right.
other companies might make their engines and they might make their different parts, but then we make just engines. But being
Mm-hmm.
able to be ahead of this market is something special. So I've definitely gotten the chance to work on a lot of very interesting projects.
Mm-hmm.
And you do see a lot of things, and you do understand, okay, what goes on behind the scenes to make sure that, okay, when these products go out,
Mm-hmm.
they are going to be good, right? They're going to actually stand out. So I can't say specifically, but I can definitely let you know that there's I've definitely worked on a lot
All
of
right,
nice
offline. You'll tell me
interesting projects.
offline. So sorry, listeners. All right. Okay. I was gonna. Okay. So this just popped in my mind, right? Um, the engine, car engine as we know it is, with just they use conventional fuel, right? But now
Hmm.
we're having the rise of electric vehicles. How does that change? The what's the correct word for this? How does this change the anatomy of the engine? Is it actually that much of a difference? And have you looked into, like, you know the engines for electric vehicles compared to like
Hmm.
conventional? Can you like enlighten some of us who aren't as familiar?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we know that Cummins is mainly diesel engines, right? But
Right.
then obviously with the rise of electric vehicles that we can see, and then even just looking to what Cummins is doing recently, you can definitely see we're looking also into these up and coming technologies. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the industry generally, um, we still have a long way, right, for electric vehicles. We still have a long way in terms of research, in terms of increasing the energy storing capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and for a very long time, we're still going to need conventional fuels, gasoline, diesel. Just looking into our general roads and all, right. We need, if you're taking a trip, let's say from New York to California, right? You don't want to stop too much, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely a gasoline vehicle is what you would have in mind, or a diesel vehicle is what you have in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Until that point in the future, when we can get more, I guess, efficient, lithium ion batteries, or what other types of
Yeah.
ion
Our
cells that we
guest
can
last
think about
yeah.
that can store.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
No, I was saying, our guest on the last episode, he's working on actually sodium ion batteries
sodium,
to
yeah.
replace
Hmm.
lithium. So it's interesting to see, but there's definitely a lot of research going into it. So go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, that's actually a very interesting research, sodium ion, and
Yeah.
I definitely would love to read more about that because things like that interest me. But yeah, just other than just regular on highway, right? Think about off highway things like your tractors, things like generation for power generation for like estates. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of this is run on maybe diesel fuel, because we know that these are long lasting. These are they have very good reliability,
Mm-hmm.
and again, the research for electric is still taking some time. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, for I mean, I see it as it's going to be a combination, right? Because people see them as it's going to be one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I see it as these are going to these two different um energy generation or power generation industry, I guess industries and ways are going to come together.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to work side by side. Whereas in these industries, we're going to have EVs or electric power,
Mm-hmm.
and for a kind of backup or kind of side by side with that, we're going to have like gasoline or diesel. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to the future, right? I'm looking forward to seeing what comes about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what about just the differences in the engines? Are you able to comment on that? Because I haven't looked into the hood of a Tesla, but
Hmm.
the engine is a lot smaller than like a conventional engine. Do you know anything about that, or do you know anything about like the differences within the two. I don't know much, so I want to make sure I'm not
Oh, okay.
saying anything I don't.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, an engine is, or regular engines, like gasoline or diesel, these use internal combustion, right? So it's almost basically a mini explosion. Let's take a gasoline engine. It has air, and it brings in air into a chamber. It brings in it pulls in air, and then it puts like some fuel, and then it uses a spark, right? And then that kind of creates the combustion, and that's the combustion, and that drives the vehicle. Now, when you're looking at EVs, it's not really an engine; it's almost like a battery. It's I believe from the EV companies that I've looked at least from the research I've done, I know for like Tesla and a few others, they don't have any engines or anything like that in the front or in the back. It's actually kind of under the car, and I think that's just which is smart, right? It's a way to save on space. I mean, now they call the front trunk. So I think that's pretty interesting because you have like that double space, and then the batteries kind of like lie under the vehicle, and it's pretty much just a more energy dense version of the batteries that you'd use in other devices. But in your car, these are high tech, right? They're supposed to power a whole vehicle. So um I'll say all of most cars would have batteries in them, but then this doesn't power too much. It's like, okay, yeah, to start probably helping you start your car, starting some basic things. But then in an EV, you're looking at this battery powering your whole car, and powering every single part
all
of
the
it. So
components and electronics, not just the drive, not just
exactly. So and even when you look at the size of, look, if you let's open your hood and just see the size of the battery versus imagine the battery being laid through the whole underneath of your car, right? Those are big difference in sizes. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much power how much energy they are storing and supplying to the car. So
yeah, definitely, man. It's interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how things evolve, because I guess one of the things that makes the conventional engine take so much space is because of just the room required in order for that mini explosion to happen, right? So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. But there's a lot of effort being put into trying to make sure that where charging stations being put, across multiple states, there are companies specifically focused on that.
oh
From
yeah.
California all the way to the East Coast, and then to Canada. So
It's interesting because just a few years ago, I think it's like when you're driving from, you could drive 500 miles and only see one charging station, but now you can maybe see like 3, 4, 5. We're getting there, right? It's getting there, and it's really interesting to see. And I think it helps because a lot of all these different companies have the ability to pop up and actually become successful companies. They start out being small, but then they kind of grow into. As EV companies growing, they also grow side by side. So it's definitely very good for the economy for one, and it's good for all the startups. So
yeah, definitely. Alrighty, man. That's I'm gonna be looking forward to just continuously watching this. Until then, I will keep rocking with my conventional engine car.
Hey, it's getting there, right? We're all getting there. There'll come a time when, hey, I'll be like, hey, Mahmoud, can you lend me a Tesla? Let me quickly drive to the store.
Sure.
But,
You might just it's gonna be self-driving, so no worries. So it'll take you there.
right? You said you're based in Maryland, right? So I'm like, oh, hey, can you send your Tesla over here? I want to quickly take a trip down
Yeah.
to Texas or something. But yeah.
It's exciting, but some people, well, at least self-driving, driverless cars or self-driving cars. For me, I think they're exciting. I think as long as they can be proved it's safe, I don't. I'm okay with testing it out, but you still have a lot of people who are don't want to have nothing to do with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, do you personally, would you, if I hand you a self-driving car now, would you actually like trust yourself to drive?
Yeah, probably not. I think we have a while to go. You know, yeah. I might test it. I might test it like for a mile. I'll just
Hmm.
sit there and just put you auto driving for a mile and just watch how the car behaves. And
Hmm.
just observe from there and get my experience. I'm not gonna blindly go in
Just
blind faith. Yeah, blind faith.
yeah, no, I agree with you fully because for me, I think it's definitely gonna take a while for me to fully trust it like that. I mean, if anything, like you said, right, I might stay there, have my hand on the wheel, and say, "Okay, drive." Or if your hand shouldn't be on the wheel, then just kind of like have it close by. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I don't think I'm at that point where I fully trust.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, I mean, it's technology, and I mean, it's being improved every day. So there will come a time where, yeah, I mean, cruise control. Some people still don't trust cruise control in your car, which is funny, but here I am, I drive 300, 400 miles, and majority of that could be on cruise control as long as the road is, free and kind of clear. So I I mean, I feel like, at some point we can have the same idea for the self-driving cars where, okay, I know it's a free road, I know there's not that much traffic, or even with traffic, right? I've seen videos where, you know, these self-driving cars are able to maneuver with traffic, and I mean, they have the sensors all around the cars, able to know, okay, how far vehicles are, the stopping distance that they would have between, that car and the next car and the cars beside them. So it's a lot of work and technology going into them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So another question here. So
Hmm.
as a test engineer, all right, and someone who is like the last line of defense, what
Hmm.
traits are very important in order for you to be successful in this? I'm asking for students who may be considering something like this, or other
Hmm.
professionals.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, good attention to detail. I mean, we hear these things all the time. You read an application, you hear all of this, but there's a difference between reading it and thinking about it and actually being at the point where you actually have to use these skills. So, one thing is attention to detail, because as a test engineer, we go through a lot of data. You're making sure that you're monitoring different data sets, sensors, components. You want to make sure that everything is on in tip-top shape. So the slightest change can cause adverse effects down the line. So it's actually being able to do that due diligence of saying, hey, I'm going to look through this data intently and not take shortcuts. So that's one. Technical knowledge is also a big thing, and this goes to any industry you're going to be in. You need to know what is involved. You need to know your basic mechanical engineering concepts and how those apply to the field that you're in. So I'll say those are that's another big thing. There's a lot of things that you can look at, but another important thing that I don't hear enough, especially for students, is your soft skills. Things that could actually also help you in these roles, because I mean, as a test engineer, you actually work with a lot of stakeholders, project stakeholders, right? So, it's a lot of, I mean, people of different levels, people of at different teams. So you can be working with an electrical engineer, you can work with a design engineer, with a component engineer, different things like that, and you need to be able to communicate very effectively. You need to be able to take your results, take everything you've learned, and communicate it fully for somebody to understand. That person might be someone that has some prior knowledge on what you're working on, or someone that doesn't know anything. Maybe someone at a different managerial level or directorial level might not know what exactly you're working on, but you need to be able to communicate. Okay, this is what I've done. These are the steps I took, and if let's say you made a decision, why you took that decision, and maybe the adverse effects of of it. So things like that. I would also say being able to, I guess, look at the bigger picture of things. So you're working on a project, I mean, you didn't get so focused on that, you might not see everything as a whole. So, just giving an example, right? So I said that I work on, as a test engineer, I work on systems, right? I test this engine system. But then we also care about the components, right?
Yeah.
Um, if a small part, and just picture it as your car, right? If a small part of your engine fails, you might be too focused on that that you might not understand, okay, how is it affecting other parts of the engine? Or it might be something where you think, hey, do I change this part or do I not change this part? And maybe you're under a tight deadline as well.
Yeah.
So, just being able to make those important decisions of, okay, if I change this, how is it going to affect other parts? How is it going to affect other future projects?
Yeah.
Or versus, is this something that is not that important right now and we can just go along with until we complete and then look at it? So things like that are the kind of skills that you would need as a test engineer.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because, being able to kind of decide what you want to harp on is very important. Like you said, because sometimes a component, just if you have to change one component, you might have to change all the other pieces that component goes to because now it doesn't attach different. It doesn't attach the same way or things like that. So which could delay projects, and of course there are other things to consider. Kind of like when the cell phone companies like Apple, when they're deciding to release a software, it's not perfect. There are bugs that need to be fixed. But is that something that you can fix
Exactly.
later? Or is it something that you have to hold the software, stop the software from being released? So it's very
Exactly,
interesting.
yeah.
And it's also a matter, it's a matter of ethics. I remember it's a matter of ethics too, because I remember one of the cases we reviewed when I was in school was it Ford? One of their vehicles that there was an issue with where the tank was placed, and I don't remember the details, but a lot of every time one of these vehicles ended up being rear-ended, like it started causing a leak in the fuel, which led to a lot of fires and
Oh.
explosions. And this was something that the engineers, well, the design was bad, but they just didn't want to halt the project in place. So just exploring those kind of ethical decisions that you have to make, where which could affect the lives of many people. So that's a
Yeah,
lot of
honestly,
pressure.
that's one thing I'll advise any student, right? Like, ethics is important no matter what, because you're in school and you think, oh, I want to get a job, but then when you get a job, you have to realize that you actually whatever you do can have effects on people's lives. I mean, you're working on products that actually have direct impact on people's lives. So it's I think that's one of the most interesting parts of working in industries like this, but at the same time can be scary because you might be under tight deadlines and might think, oh my gosh, I need to hurry up and submit this project, things like that. But at the same time, you have to realize that, look, no matter how tight the deadline is, playing around with safety, people's lives is never, worth it. So always taking that extra time, even if it's that small extra time, that extra step, that little thing that you might do to help to make sure that, okay, this is ready, this is complete. Yeah, it's always worth it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. All right, man. So let's get to know the man behind the profession.
All right.
All right. So what do you actually, outside of engineering stuff, what do you like to do? What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? So I mean, of course, you hear this nowadays, but I'm deep in the stock markets. I mean, that's just like a. I mean, hey, everyone is doing it now. And that's very good when you hear that. Okay, people are getting into it, but that's one thing that I'm very particular about. I have this abundance mindset of, look, it's not just work you're doing. It's not just focusing fully on you know engineering. You need to also have side hobbies or side interests, right? So I'm very big with the stock market. I'm also very big with just kind of so my passion, which I need to, I've always told myself that as things, I settle more, I need to focus on some more is this kind of mentorship that I'm kind of passionate about. So one big thing for me is my looking at my background, looking at things I kind of struggled with while as a student, both in terms of getting through school, graduating and getting a job, which was the big part. Is it really speaks to me because I really know how much I want to do that for others. So whenever I have colleagues and friends that also have different organizations or are kind of starting up things like this, and my own is wanting to support each of these in any way I can, right? So even if it's providing mentorship, if it's providing ways to connect them with potential future careers, that kind of things that I personally like to do and see. So again, like I said, I'm not doing this as much as I would have liked to, but as I get more comfortable within my career, as I navigate things, these are things I'm going to be adding on the side. So that's kind of me outside work. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's a very you know good aspiration, I think, to have, to always want to give back and think think back where you were years prior, and see how you can make a difference, or share. Of course, we don't, none of us claim us ourselves like as know-it-alls, but share the little that we know, because we think it may positively impact someone else's life. So I think that's awesome, man. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'll
definitely.
encourage you for that, and be more than happy to help. If you have anything in mind. Back to your stock question, though. Do you do buy and hold long term, or do you do anything like options and stuff?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I do the risky game of options, man. I do the risky game.
Oh, really?
Found it out,
I
some months ago.
Wait, how long have you been doing it
I
for?
did. Also, options actually haven't been doing it for too long, but it feels like I've been doing it for so long. I think just because it's almost like I drifted away from like regular, stocks and started just looking into options fully. But yeah, man, it's a fun game. It's something that while I'm at work, if I have like a second of free time, quickly jump on. Hey, how's the market doing? Oh,
Yeah.
this stock is going up. Okay, do we jump in here? Do we not? So
Well, volatility is good for
it's fun.
options. So I have a friend who also, he's been studying options, but then he's recently starting to get it, and he's screenshotting like all these gains he's making, 1,000 plus. I'm like, wow, this is so tempting.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not going to
honestly,
lie. So it's very tempting.
honestly, I mean, I would say stock market is a very good way to for anyone who wants to make money on the side, right? But at the same time, it also comes with the warning because you might hear,
Yeah,
oh, there's this gains here, there's gains there, but
you have
well,
to
I
know
will
what you're
tell you
doing.
that you have to do your DD, right? Your due diligence. Like you actually have
Yeah,
to do your research because
yeah,
stocks alone are very risky. If you go jumping with 10,000 or 1,000 in this, that can literally go half in a day and
yeah,
go maybe times three the next day. So it's it's a dangerous game. But I think research and kind of having your emotions out of it definitely help.
yeah,
So do your research. What is the market saying? What is the news saying? How has the company been doing? How are the earnings? Have the earnings been? Maybe the last 2 quarters. What are the projected earnings? Things like that. And then again, sentiment, right? Your emotions. Because I know that when I first started doing it, and even till now, sometimes that's one of the things that I would struggle with. I would do this. I would jump in this stock, and I'm like, oh, this just dropped like 10%. Do I jump out now or do I stay at? I've been been beaten on both sides. Right, I've had ones where I said, okay, no, I'm going to stay, and it didn't work out how I wanted. But I've had ones where I was like, I'm not gonna stay. I'm gonna jump out, and it did a reverse on me, and then
Oh
just went up
man,
the opposite way. So
you hate when that happens.
yeah, that's the market, right? It's
Yeah, that is the stock
that's how it
market.
is.
I'll be honest, I haven't been into options or anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't know enough right now.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend has sparked my interest. Let's just put it like
Mm-hmm.
that. With all these screenshots of money. So
Hey, no, I don't know I mean, definitely, I would say, I mean, look into it, man. Do the research and see, okay,
yeah.
what is in it, and you decide, if it's something. I mean, but do you do regular stocks,
Yeah,
like
I
trading,
right like I've
investing?
always been buying and holding long term. Like I always do that. It's
Okay, that's good.
automatically. So I've always been doing that since my junior year of college, you know. So I've just been doing it now.
Wow.
Just of course I've been upping, you know, how much I put in. Now I have more income, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I understand that game better, you know, and I can kind of look at which industries I want to go into. I like investing not in individual stocks but in ETFs. Prefer ETFs,
Yeah.
um, just because some ETFs are industry based, and I can kind of look at in some industry that I see. This looks like it's going to be the future. So yeah.
No, no, and that's really good. If anything, I would advise for majority of your portfolio to be in, like, long-term stocks and ETFs, because I mean, these are things that if you look at the history and look at where it's going, you know that, I mean, there's really no downway, because even just look at what happened last March, right, during COVID. There was that sharp dip of every stock and
Yep.
every ETF, but within months there was recovery. So
Hmm.
I think majority of portfolios, and I think it's also important for students, because I think it's really good, and I would like to ask you what kind of got you into investing while you were a student. Because for me as a student, I was more of like, oh, well, I don't have money. Look, it's more money I'm making. This is going into rent. This is going into feeding myself. So how am I supposed to go and gamble in the stock market with the little money I have left? So
Hmm.
I mean, and that was kind of like the mindset I had, which, thinking in retrospect now, what might not have been the best. So I guess for you, what kind of got you into it?
Well, I think, you know, listening to podcasts. I would listen to podcasts where they talked about investing, and then they
Mm-hmm.
talked about, you know, generally speaking, if you look at history, you know, or you know, it seems like the stock has always gone towards a upward trend, you know. Now within a
Mm-hmm.
10 year, usually like you might see a dip here and there, but it always goes higher. So if you play the long game, you know, you end up winning no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And the earlier you start, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
less you have to put in later on in your life, you know, because everything compounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that I was like, well, you know, I can start with just $5, you know, every week, just automate it, you know, and then just
Mm-hmm.
go on from there. So that's what got me into it. I was like, well, it's a long game, and shoot, I stop by Dunkin' Donut and get me a coffee and like a croissant, and that's $5 right there. So it's like, why not, you know?
No,
So
and that's very good. Understand? I wish I had I wish I got those resources, or got that kind of introduction into it early on, because I mean, like you said, right, compounds, and I know almost everywhere I went into when I started working was, hey, if you start now and start putting this amount, versus if 10 years later you start putting maybe times 1.5 or something, you're still not going to
catch up, yeah,
be,
yeah.
within 30 years, you're still not going to catch up with what you'd have done, even just putting, less than that from 10 years ago. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's,
Yeah. And it's not even just like, it's also not even just the money you make over time. It's also your mindset, you know, and like
hmm
developing that habit of investing your money, you know, like I
exactly.
feel like that's more important. That's why, you know, you see a lot of millionaires or business owners, you know, they may be bankrupt, but then within two
hmm
years, you know, someone may be worth millions and then they go bankrupt, and then within a few years they're back, you know. They
hmm
had lost everything, but they gained it back. You know, it wasn't really the money itself. It was who they became as a process of earning those
hmm
millions and the knowledge that they had, and they could just replicate it, you
exactly.
know. So it was like just kind of just the learning process, which is, you know, what you're doing right now also with options and things
hmm
like that. So yeah,
Exactly. And I think also, just to add to that, right? I love what you just said, because one thing I realized is that the earlier you start, not only do you get that knowledge and that discipline, but you also get the experience. Because
yeah.
there's a graph I saw, right? Some graph I saw that about people who trade or who invest, right? Especially when you're, especially in things like options that are very high volatility. What's high volatility? What happens is that you start off making a lot of profits, and then it just has this, there's this period of like sharp decline where you just start, maybe you get overconfident and just start losing money or making wrong trades, and then you learn, you kind of recalibrate the process, and then you just get to that point where you've learned so much, you're making steady gains.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because as a student, right, it's, you're starting out when you're what, maybe 18, 19, 20, and yeah, you might be putting maybe $10, $20. But in addition to that, discipline of, hey, let me get into that mindset of investing, you're also learning, what works for you. You're learning, okay, what are the methods that gives you the consistent gains. And you also, just going into the example you gave of people who are, millionaires now, all these big people. One thing I actually realized is common when I read all of their, whether it's their Wikipedia or, just their history, is a lot of these people actually started when they were young.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Warren Buffett, you look at, Elon Musk, you actually see that, hey, these guys had something when they were young. I mean, Warren Buffett started with, was in newspapers that he was selling on, something like that. And
Yeah.
this was during what, his teen years or even younger than that.
I think he was
Elon Musk
12
also
when he
had
bought his
something.
first stock. Warren Buffett, I think he was 12 or
Yeah,
13. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly right, exactly. And also, yeah, I think Elon Musk also had something when he was that young. Lots of these people I read about, they, and I start thinking, like, what's, like, is there a correlation between starting young and then, getting to that point where you're like, you're a big successful owner later in future? I mean, there definitely has to be a relation. So yeah, that's definitely a very good point that you brought up, and I think it's very advisable for every student out there. High school, college, start somewhere. There's always this question of, hey, I don't have this much, or what do I invest? Start somewhere, like you said, $5 every month. Just put something. Just, if it's not the money, it's the habit, it's the knowledge, it's the experience. So
definitely, man, definitely. Do you
mhm.
okay, you talked about trying to get into mentorship and stock. Do you also do anything else?
Mhm.
Are you into sports or anything like that? Do you play
Um.
that kind of stuff or
So no, I like to call myself a lazy bug.
well? Okay,
I
do you
can't.
not play, but do you watch? Or at least
Oh, well, I mean, again, same thing, right? Actually don't really watch. I do play sport. I do play volleyball. So, I try to, play, do it at least a few times a week. Just to make sure
oh,
I'm getting
nice.
blood flowing, especially since COVID, right? Just trying to do something active. So I don't really. Back when I was younger, I think there was a time when I did play soccer, but not anymore.
Wow.
But yeah, I do play volleyball. I prefer that. In terms of watching, I don't really watch a lot of sports. I think I use my time for other things. I'm not as that some people have like that big fan mentality. Like, oh,
Oh
fully
yeah.
supporting the club. But I'm just not one of those, which was obviously very weird. Especially going through high school and even coming here into the US and college. Where everyone is like, "Hey, you're Nigerian. Why don't you play soccer? Why don't you?" I want to be a fan of any soccer club, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just one of the few who are just like that. But yeah, and I try to also exercise and workouts, things that to keep me up and going. So.
So, what about video games? Do you like video games or no?
Oh no, so I actually don't have video games. I mean, I did used to play before a lot, but right now I don't play as much. I do occasionally. I do, I have my. I guess this is winding down time. I have like Netflix and Prime,
Uh-huh.
so kind
Okay.
of just to calm down. I do watch. Some people say it's like a dad thing, but I do watch news
Oh,
sometimes just to see, hey, what's happening. Well, a lot of times it can get too much, and I'm like, okay, let me calm down a bit. Let me,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm starting to shout at my TV or getting so, riled up. So
Yeah,
yeah, just
the news
let
will
me
get you
calm down.
thinking that everything is bad around the world. You know. Yeah, the world's about to end
That's true.
sometimes. So it's a balance. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because your life shouldn't be only work, right? It shouldn't just be I fully focus on work. I wake up in the morning, clock into work, go through work the whole day, clock out, and I'm just like, hey, that's the end. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think having other things is very helpful. So
So are you
yeah.
actually able to work virtually with what you do, or sometimes, or do you usually do have to do physical when testing and things like that?
So right now I'm actually working. I can actually be working virtually. I was before I wasn't just because I was working on different projects where it had to be more. Um, I mean, I guess for the most part I was still virtual. But then if I needed to go in for something, maybe to support or just to make sure something is going well, then I would go in. But for the most part, I was virtual. But now I'm more or less fully virtual. Just because a lot of the projects I'm working on are things I can do, from the comfort of my home. So yeah, that's the nice thing. I don't know. I assume I know you mentioned that you go back home, right? So I assume you're,
Yeah.
you're not virtual,
I'm
or
not.
you're not fully virtual.
Nah. They consider nah, at least in initial working, we're considered like
Mm-hmm.
essential, and we have to like show up. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that virtual. Which my other job actually, I
Mm-hmm.
spent the last 2 or 3 months virtual. Oh
Oh yeah.
man, it was. Whew, I could not concentrate, man. I need people energy. That's why I need to be out there. Like if you lock me
Oh
up,
really?
I'm telling you, man, I'm not gonna to get anything done. So yeah,
Now
I
that's
actually like
interesting.
it.
I mean, so are you more of like a extroverted person that needs people around?
Yeah, I need other people's energy around me. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy that, and I enjoy working in a job where I have to communicate with a lot of people, and I enjoy a
Mm-hmm.
job that gives me diversity in my tasks and activities. I cannot come and do the same thing every day. Like it really, if I have to, I will, but I'm not at my best usually. After a while, I tend to lose interest. So but with the
Mm-hmm.
the industry I work in, you know hey, today morning I had come in. I was supposed to be looking at the project of the progress of our various projects and recording that data since it's almost end of the month, so we can report it. But guess what? Last night during the night shift, there were a lot of issues. Some of the components that we ordered that we had fabricated did not fit well with the components, other existing components we had. So I had to like spend
Mm-hmm.
most of the day trying to troubleshoot and figure out what was the issue. We had
Mm-hmm.
the bolt size that was ordered. They were too short because the inspectors wanted us to use double nuts. So trying to
Mm-hmm.
troubleshoot that, and so I spent the whole day, most of the day, doing something I did not anticipate. You know, tomorrow morning, I'm not going to the office. I have to go
Mm-hmm.
to the work site and see what's going on and inspect these parts for myself, because we had inspected it,
Okay,
but there are
nice.
things we didn't, understand. And then from there, I'm going at another work site for another project. So I really like that flexibility and that change of
Yeah,
scenery and environment. So I just enjoy it and I love it. So yeah,
that actually sounds interesting because you actually get to see things in the office and then you get see things out in the field. So
yeah.
that definitely sounds pretty interesting. I mean, for me, I'm more of a hey. I mean, I can do one thing for some time. I mean, after a while, I definitely would like some change. But sometimes depending on what kind of project it is or what kind of task I'm doing, I might not mind doing it in a similar thing for some time. But I'm also somebody that we change. It's kind of weird because we change. I'm still also excited. Like, hey, this is different, so I like this. But at the same time, if it's different but it's like interesting, I can also focus on that one thing for like some period of time. And I mean, in terms of working from home, I love it. I mean, at first it was weird because I actually hadn't worked from home I don't think I'd worked from home before, if anything, maybe once or so. I was always like that guy that I'm at work, like I'm going to
Yeah.
be at work.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but then with the whole COVID thing, it was kind of different for me. And
Hmm.
at first, it was strange. I was liking it, but at the same time, I was feeling weird. And at some point, I got tired of it. I was like, yeah, no, I'm ready to go back into the office. But now I'm actually at that point where I'm like, to be honest, I don't want to go back in. Like I've gotten so used to being at home and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, all my schedule has become very home based. I'm like, how do I wake? How would I wake up at some 6 or 7 and shower, brush, eat, do everything all before
Traffic.
8? And,
Yeah.
I don't know how I did it.
I'll be honest, I did like that part though, like just getting up and going to a desk. You don't have to. It saves you so much hours, time in the day. Just your commute,
Mm-hmm.
man. You save so much time just
Mm-hmm.
from your from commuting to and back from work. So yeah,
Yeah.
I did not mind that part. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely understand you on that. Most people do not want to go back to the commuting life, which I don't blame them. And this is actually very I think very economical, for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of companies because you don't
Yeah.
realize you don't need that much office space. You don't need to be paying for air conditioning all day, 24/7. You don't, like a lot of people working from home. They usually have their own internet and things like that. So
Exactly.
it reduces a lot of the costs. And and you don't have to eat out, but the companies also don't have to like spend a lot of money on coffee and things like that and
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. So
I think it's a win-win for everyone, right? Because
yeah.
as the employee, you don't have to pay for gas. I mean, the amount I'm saving on gas, you don't have
Yeah.
to pay for gas. You don't have to, you know, going into the office like you said, right? Sometimes I might want to get like a coffee or
Yeah.
buy lunch or something.
Yeah.
I'm saving money on that. It's a lot, but then the companies to save money because hey, the upkeep of areas,
Yeah.
providing free coffee or free food sometimes, or the
Yeah.
cafeteria, things like that. It's just it's a win-win, and I think a lot of companies now, I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's their plan
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's COVID. I think one. People we all see COVID as this whole bad thing, but sometimes you just have to look at the good things that have come out of it. And I think one of the main good things is that it has really opened the eyes of a lot of companies. They can
Yeah.
now see that hey, we don't need to force our employees to come in every single day of the week. We can actually
Right.
function very well,
From home,
efficiently,
and people are
virtually.
gonna do their job, right? Because that's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest
Exactly.
worry. Yeah, people are gonna do their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, a lot of companies before it was like, oh, working from home was a taboo. You
Yeah.
couldn't. I mean, not even just companies, schools. A lot of all these corporations are like, hey, you can't do anything virtually. But now it's like everybody's getting into that mindset of virtual things. I mean, which is also boosting technology some more. But
Mm-hmm.
we're all getting into that mindset of,
Yeah.
hey, things can be done virtually. I mean, technology has opened the door for a lot of things. So I mean, like, don't come into work anymore to becoming 5 days a week, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's awesome, and I
Hmm.
think this I think this is the millennium mentality where I think
Hmm.
we had, which is being getting rid of, like where you know you have to show up every day and stay till six,
Hmm.
like for you to be a hard worker. But
Hmm.
like now I realize, okay, now it's more so about being efficient and getting measurable things done. It's not just about
Exactly.
spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day at work.
Hmm.
If it's about being efficient, and getting the
Exactly.
job done and getting specific things done. So
Exactly.
yeah.
I think companies have to really review how they give feed I mean their feedback and I guess measurement system of all I mean efficiency because I remember like some months ago I was talking with a colleague of mine who so I hardly ever would I mean since COVID I hardly ever went into the office. Sometimes
Hmm.
it would be like once a month, twice a month. And I mean I'm working on different projects. I'm doing lots of things that are my require typically in that mindset would require me to be on site, but I could function very well. I mean, if I needed to be honest, and then I would go. But a lot of things that I was able to do very well from home. And then I know once I went to my, he was like, oh, he was kind of like curious as to if I was even efficient in any way because he was like, you, he has been coming in every day and getting work. And I was like, look, it's not about how much you come in. That doesn't tell anything. If I'm able to accomplish the same or even more amount of work from my house, look, I mean, that's a win for me because
Yeah.
it's my comfort.
Yeah. No
Company gets to
commuting.
save, doesn't have to pay for maybe me being there or something, and I'm still getting the same work or more work done. So
Yeah.
it's everything is different now.
Definitely, man. Definitely. All right. So let's say, students listen to this and they like what you do, right? And they say they want to be like a test engineer. What advice could you give them? How can they, what should they be doing at school? Let's say they're major mechanical engineering. What kind of things should they be trying to add in their major? What kind of experiences should they be looking to get? Can you give any advice on
Um,
that?
so I mean, just in addition to like things I already said before, right? Just work on your, detail oriented things like that. I mean, those are things that you kind of generate and you make up your mind that you want to do. But some skills that you can learn for to be a test engineer is, data analysis because um, I think most test engineering roles you'd have to go through a lot of data because it's data that tells you what's happening, right?
Right.
Your observation or your statement without data is really just your opinion, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always saying that. So you need to
Oh,
really
that's a
work.
bar.
Yeah, so you really need to work on your data analysis skills. And different corporations have different softwares they might use. So some might use MATLAB, some might use Excel, some might use um, maybe there's also software test engineers who might use Python, C++, Java, things like that. So just whatever area you're in, I would say work on your data analysis skills, know how to identify things in data, and the rest is really just know your mechanical engineering for. I mean, and now I'm kind of talking to mechanical engineering, but I guess beyond mechanical, know your fundamentals of whatever area you want to go into. If
Yeah.
you want to go into Boeing, maybe the airline industry, know things about turbos, things about drafts, your air mechanics, right? Your drafts, your lifts, things like that that you're going to really be using, when you get out there. You're going into the, you know, consumer electronics industry, know things about your PCBs, know things about I guess thermal systems because you're going to think of okay, how do in whatever way I'm going to tell, like, okay, let's say you have a phone, right? You're probably going to have to conduct thermal cycling tests or bulk tests, tests for strength, fatigue, things like that. So you just start planning what I mean, and it's good if you can also think of these things. You don't need to get into the company for them to tell you, hey, we'll need this test. Start asking yourself, what industry do I want to go into? In that kind of industry, what kind of tests would they run? And for the tests they run, what are the fundamentals of what I would need? Because that fundamental knowledge is one of the most important things. And then the rest of it is just, I mean, a lot of it is learned. A lot, like I said, I had very little engine knowledge before joining Cummins, and between when I joined and now is like a whole lot. So a lot of things when you become a test engineer, you're going to learn, but it's also having that open mind of being able to learn and not just learn and store, is learn and implement. So as you're learning, you're using it. One big thing for me is that, and I don't know, maybe this might be a weakness, but for me, it's like if I'm going to be learning something, I'm going to go through a training. I want to use it like right now because hey, if I'm not using this immediately or very soon, you might as well just save the training for me for later. Like
Yeah.
I learn very well when I'm working on things. So
Yeah.
you give me a small amount of information, I start learning, and I come to you with a whole load of questions. That's how I am. So I think as a student is just start preparing for those things, start having that mindset of okay, hey, learning questions, generating questions, being inquisitive, and just work on your fundamentals, work on your data analysis skills. Yeah, and I think you you'll be successful in pretty much any industry you go into.
All right, man. Awesome, awesome. This was an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely
Yeah,
did.
definitely.
Um, guys, if you're listening to this, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. And if you did, make sure you let Lawrence know. And if you enjoyed this podcast, of course, make sure that you're sharing with other people as well. Lawrence, first of all, thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time to join us
Of
here
course.
and all the information you shared. I had an amazing and great time.
Of course, and thank you so much, Mahmoud. I mean, I appreciate getting the chance to come here to talk, and it was definitely interesting. I enjoyed it. So,
All right, I'm
thank you for what you do, for what you do for students and everyone. I mean, and I know I told you this before this podcast started, but this is definitely a wonderful concept that would help anyone. So, share with your friends, share with anyone you know, guys.
definitely.